Welcome to The Conspiracy Show. My name is Richard Syrett. According to legend, the werewolf, or lycanthrope, is a human with the ability to shapeshift into a wolf or wolf-like creature. The human can transform into a werewolf in one of three ways: either purposely, after being bitten by another werewolf, or after being placed under a curse. In most accounts, the anthropomorphic wolf creature has superhuman strength, is by and large bipedal, and retains most of the wolf characteristics, including long curved claws, a long snout, and fearsome canine fangs. As hard as this may be to swallow, there have been numerous alleged werewolf sightings in recent years in places like Kent and in the south of England, and along a lonely stretch of road in the state of Wisconsin. So tonight, The Conspiracy Show investigates the werewolf and whether there may be some truth behind this legend. We're about to meet a noted paranormal investigator in New York City who will separate fact from fiction on the subject, and two cryptozoologists, one in Kent, England, and the other in Wisconsin, who've investigated alleged werewolf sightings. And of course, all this talk of werewolves will be tempered with a skeptical viewpoint from our no-nonsense investigator of paranormal claims. Me, I'm like you. I just want the truth. And I'm willing to follow the truth wherever it leads. It is time to redefine reality. Genetic enigma or a human alien hybrid? That's how cynical I am now about the process. Is it possible technology can alter weather patterns created by they're going to make us has been engineered by the Illuminati?
There's no doubt.
I'm here with Neil Arnold, the British Isles' preeminent paranormal researcher. Neil, what is it about this region of England, Kent? You get so many sightings here of strange mythical creatures, werewolves. What is it about this place?
Well, I just think, like a lot of places, when they're quite old, it's far more interesting to do research into an area like that with lots of folklore.
Neil, what's your definition of a werewolf?
I believe there's several kind of definitions. Mainly, of course, people see a werewolf as being something akin to the stuff you'd see in movies, these bipedal creatures with a very long sort of muzzle. But I believe it's something that goes back, similar to vampires, possibly since the dawn of man, whether it's a shape-shifting type of being or some kind of sort of paranormal manifestation, possibly something more to do with the human psyche, possibly.
What do witnesses typically report seeing?
Generally, and it seems to be all across Britain, is that people are seeing a figure that is sort of usually bipedal, covered in shaggy fur, usually with a long muzzle, or some type of what they describe as man-beast. But of course, in the UK, it seems very unlikely we could have any type of unknown animal, so it seems that it's to do with, or a product of the human psyche.
Linda Godfrey is the author of The Beast of Bray Road, Hunting the American Werewolf, and Monsters of Wisconsin. Linda, welcome to The Conspiracy Show.
Thanks for having me.
When did you first become aware of this wolf-like creature along Bray Road in Wisconsin?
It was back in December of 1991 when I started hearing rumors around my own hometown that people were seeing what they were calling, for lack of a better word mostly, a werewolf, because it stood 5 to 7 feet tall, was covered with fur, had a long muzzle, erect ears on top of its head, and the weird thing was that it walked on its hind legs very easily, on its toe pads, not on all fours like a dog. And the thing that made me decide to tell my editor I think we should write a story about this was that they weren't acting like hoaxsters. They were phoning our county animal control officer and telling him about it and saying, I saw this thing. I don't know what it was, but if there was such a thing as a werewolf, this would be it. And so then our county animal control officer, when I paid him a visit, showed me a manila file folder that he had labeled werewolf. So when you have a county official with a file folder marked werewolf, that's news in anybody's book.
What did your editors at the newspaper say when you told them you wanted to write a story about this?
Well, they were, luckily it was sort of a slow news time, And they thought that it would be a fun local interest story and that everybody would have some fun with it for a few weeks, and then it would die down. But instead, within a couple of weeks, Inside Edition came out and did a half-hour piece on it. I was getting calls from all over the country and letters from people saying, this is no joke, I saw this thing, or my dad saw this thing, it's real. And I was shocked to learn that these creatures are seen all over the United States and the world, not just on one little isolated road in Wisconsin.
It's important, however, not to be afraid, because fear seems to generate a magnetic effect all of its own, and it literally attracts what you're afraid of to you.
Rosemary Ellen Guiley is a paranormal investigator and the author of the Encyclopedia of Vampires and Werewolves. Rosemary, welcome.
Thank you, Richard. The werewolf is interested in a bloody rampage. The werewolf of folklore is interested in a bloody rampage. The connection between werewolves and the full moon is something that's been embellished a lot in fiction. When we look at some of the earlier cases from centuries ago, werewolves, people that is who had the magical ability to change into a wolf form, could do so at any time. Sometimes it was during the cycle of the moon.
Let's talk about the man-beasts that have been spotted along this very short, seemingly unremarkable stretch of road in Wisconsin called Bray Road. People there, what are they seeing?
The Beast of Bray Road, also known as sort of a werewolf-type creature. The werewolf is an interesting idea and is a metaphor in a way for mankind. We have these beasts of prey like Jeffrey Dahmer and Jack the Ripper, and in fact, in earlier times, the crimes of such people were thought to be the work of werewolves.
There was a creature around this area known as the Great Dog, and it was a ferocious folkloric type of monster. But on one occasion, a chap was walking in the area when this creature leapt out on him, bit him in the throat, killed him, and ate him on the spot. And what was left of this poor guy was said to have been buried on the Pilgrim's Way.
In our myth-making capacity as human beings, I think we tend to invent entities in our image. So Bigfoot is our stupid cousin from the past. But E.T., the extraterrestrial, is a futuristic version of us. And I think werewolves and vampires are us with an attitude.
Did you begin your investigation as a skeptic?
I did begin very much as a skeptic with my reporter's hat on, and I still try to keep my reporter's hat on. And most of the time, I just can't find any way to explain it.
This is not the sort of place you want to walk at night, is that right? Yeah.
What might you encounter?
A very large creature, about 8.5 foot tall, with burning red eyes. There's been several reports where people have actually seen a very strange man-beast up until just a few years ago. On one occasion, a local area called Bluebell Hill, which is very wooded, got lots of folklore and Roman mythology. These group of friends were walking into the wood one night, came down this track, and there was this creature up ahead, which they said was about 8 feet tall. It was like a creature that had red eyes that he said was coming across the field.
Always at night?
Usually at night, yeah. And you don't really get people in this area of a night, so.
They tap notions of predation, being predatory, the notion that the devil made me do it, something came over me, I didn't know what I was doing. It's all about us. We're making a mythology about us.
The girl that see one in 2008 as it was crossing a road, and she said she crashed the vehicle, broke her arm, and she just said that she struggles to sleep at night now. Nobody really takes her serious as to what she's seen.
Most encounters happen in automobiles. They're driving down the road, and the people are pretty safe. But those out in the open, I would exercise extreme caution. I've had people shoot at them with little or no effect.
People talk about sort of silver bullets to repel these creatures. I think, again, this is just the stuff of Hollywood. I think we create these type of repellents simply so we feel there is something that can keep us safe.
If one were to encounter a werewolf, what should you do?
Run.
And of course, if there is something out there in the woods, we don't really want to know about it. We like mystery, but we don't want it starting to come into our bedrooms or our back gardens.
Most of the time when people encounter by surprise supernatural entities, the entities go away. They really don't want any interaction with us. It's important, however, not to be afraid, because fear seems to generate a magnetic effect all of its own, and it literally attracts what you're afraid of to you.
So of course Hollywood tends to paint this picture of a guy that transforms by the full moon and still leaves some of his clothes on his sort of hairy body and goes on the rampage, but I don't think that's true, certainly in the UK.
Linda, you've discussed the possibility that the Beast of Bray Road, this thing that's being called a werewolf, may just in fact be an undiscovered variety of wild dog. But is there a possibility in your mind that it is in fact a lycanthrope, a shape-shifting creature that's a human by day and a wolf at night?
Well, I don't discount any possibility. I try and keep a really open mind. And while I don't believe that actual human beings turn into physically wolf-like creatures, you know, every corpuscle changing and your DNA changing like in the movies, I do believe that it's possible that there are other types of supernatural manifestations that could look like that. But I just have seen enough strange things and heard enough strange things that I do keep an open mind as to that possibility.
So of course Hollywood tends to paint this picture of a guy that transforms by the full moon and still leaves some of his clothes on his sort of hairy body and goes on the rampage, but I don't think that's true, certainly in the UK.
The face of a bear, you may think that bears and wolves don't look much alike, but get a good picture of the head of each and they have the same muzzle. They're not that different if you were not getting a good look at something. I see no reason to invoke the word werewolf, really, with the Bray Road, because they might as well be talking about Bigfoot. Some say it's a bear-like creature. Or we don't have something that's clearly a wolf, because once you start having it bipedal, it's not a wolf. It's not even a werewolf by the old European form. No, you're talking about, because the werewolf, when it transformed, was a ravenous wolf. And the idea of an upright, sort of wolfish, man-like creature is probably mostly the effect of our mythologizing tendency.
And the fact that you would expect if people were making things up, that these stories would vary widely, that the creature would look widely different, but it all always boils down to very much the same scenario and the same description.
I get lots of reports of people that have seen strange creatures. I certainly believe that people are seeing something. Not everybody is a liar, not everybody is drunk or mad.
What role does mass hysteria play in an incident like this, where you have people all over Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois reporting these sightings?
Well, I think what most people, when they use the term mass hysteria, and it is a popular term, I think what they really want to refer to is something called contagion. And psychological contagion is a really simple thing to explain, and let me explain it with a very brief case that happened in the Netherlands. It's almost a classic case. We had a panda escape from a zoo in the Netherlands, and a media alert went out. Everybody's looking for the panda. Predictably, we start getting panda sightings. Eventually, we had about 100 panda sightings. We know the panda didn't get out. We know it didn't go anywhere. We know that in any case, it couldn't have been seen almost simultaneously all over the Netherlands. And we can just track that to so many other cases. We have this wonderful test case.
I don't think that mass hysteria fits this case very well because many times people never heard that there was such a thing before, and then they just years later will chance to come across one of my books, or somebody will recommend me to them, and they're like, oh, thank goodness there are other people who have seen this, you know. So it's not like they knew about it. And if it was mass hysteria over something, you'd think they'd be seeing a creature like Bigfoot or something that is made a lot more of and much more known to the public than this creature is.
Yeah, when you look at the amount of people that do come forward, it's quite startling. And people have actually been in tears talking to me about how they've actually seen something they just can't understand.
Is it possible, Linda Godfrey has posited that what they're seeing might be some undiscovered species of wild dog? The witnesses describe this, it looks like a wolf, but it's bipedal. It seems to be able to hold things with its paws.
Well, wolves aren't bipedal. If I were forced to give one creature that I think might mostly cover the Beast of Bray Road, I would be more apt to suggest a bear, because some of the descriptions say it was on all fours, and others that it stood upright.
I think the real werewolf is a creature who lives in a parallel dimension. We have many legends going back to ancient times of creatures that would be called dogmen. They're half human, half animal. We may encounter these from time to time in certain areas. We may have like windows or doorways where our universe collides with theirs. So I think those are real. I also think that there are certain magically empowered people who have the ability to shapeshift into werewolves. But I think this is done in the astral form, not the physical.
But I just believe that these type of things exist because it needs somebody to actually trigger these things off. So in other words, you know, do they still appear if there is nobody there to see them? And I believe they don't. They can't live in the woods because it's not scientifically or biologically possible. So I believe that they've kind of over the years been given a strength through sort of the media and film, and also as well more misunderstood cases in Europe centuries ago tended to be people that had strange medical issues, rabies, schizophrenia, that weren't understood, so we labelled them as werewolves or vampires, and that's how these things have mainly come about. But I also believe these are strange sort of manifestations that for centuries have existed and that we've eventually put them there, moulded them, and they've become stronger in our culture.
Now we know about serial killers. We're well on to that. Modern science has got those guys pegged.
Hundreds of people all over the country and the world are reporting seeing this. And again, they run the gamut from kids to elderly, white-collar, blue-collar, men, women, sometimes couples or whole groups will see it at the same time, which rules out hallucinations. So, you know, unless there's some massive conspiracy to hoax me by all these hundreds of people phoning in, and, you know, they're superb actors redisplaying this fear emotion that they had.
Yeah, when you look at the amount of people that do come forward, it's quite startling. People have actually been in tears talking to me about how they've actually seen something they just can't understand. And of course, there are a lot of people who don't want to tell their family about what they've seen because they fear ridicule. They don't want to tell friends because their friends won't take them seriously. So people seem very, very genuine as to what they are seeing.
You know, and sometimes it's 20, 30 years later, but they still want to tell somebody who won't think they're crazy.
I think if they know that somebody's actually out there doing proper research into it, who won't sort of laugh at these stories, then they know at least they can open up and get it off their chest. And I think that's the important thing. And they want to know if it's connected to them, why they should see it, as if it's picked on them. But then of course you start getting more and more reports and you realise there's more going on and they're not the only people that's actually seen it, which is quite a relief for them.
So, how do we explain this ancient, widespread legend of the lycanthrope? Certain cursed human individuals shape-shifting into wolf-like creatures which rip their human prey limb from limb. Most likely, the werewolf legends have been used to explain serial killings, particularly serial killers who have indulged in certain practices associated with werewolves, such as cannibalism and mutilation. Then, of course, there were occasional but widespread wolf attacks across Europe until the 20th century. It's also possible that historical accounts of werewolves could be explained by a number of medical conditions, such as hypertrichosis, a hereditary condition manifesting in excessive hair growth, or porphyria, with its symptoms of photosensitivity, reddish teeth, and psychosis. And of course, there are remarkable similarities between symptoms of the rabies disease and the werewolf legend. The sightings of bipedal wolf-like creatures in England are tougher to explain. For those of us who believe in a spiritual realm, we have to at least consider the possibility that these eyewitnesses are catching a fleeting glimpse into another dimension, one in which such creatures may exist. The wolf-like creature seen walking on two legs in parts of Wisconsin and Michigan. Is it a bear? An as yet undiscovered species of wolf or some other canine? I'd have to see one for myself before making up my mind. And here's hoping I may never have that opportunity. And now I'd like to know what you think. You can contact us here at The Conspiracy Show through our website, www.theconspiracyshow.com. In the meantime, don't be afraid.